Wow. Okay, looks like we've got all the people we're going to get today. I'm going to do this a little bit differently than I did it last time, because last time I made a video for all you guys at home, but I wasn't crazy about the still photos for the calculator and stuff like that. So I've got a new projector here. I've got an overhead camera here. I've got a microphone here so I can sit at the desk and talk, and all my students in class can hear me. All you guys at home can hear me, and we can go over all this stuff. Remember, the STAAR test is May the 5th. And we're going over problems 19 through 36 today. And then next time we'll go over the last 18 problems. And then we'll go on to something else. And I know we've skipped over a few, and we're going to skip over another one today. We'll catch all those up at the end. So, but what this little overhead camera allows me to do is show you on the calculator how I'm using it. Remember, when your calculator's in a test mode, it won't have inequalities, the ability to do inequalities and a couple other things. If you've checked out a calculator, it may still have that ability. I don't know. But we're going to have to set them all so they don't have that ability when you take the STAAR test. Speaking of calculators, if you need one, come get it. Just bring your signed form with you, or if you don't have a printer, you can sign it on your computer and then email it back to me. Or if you want, just come here and tell me you don't have a form, and I'll bring a form with me, but one of your parents has to sign it, so they'd have to come into the attendance office to do that. And then I can bring the calculator up to you. I know I've given out about 15 calculators so far, but there's probably 60 of you at home, so I know a lot of you still don't have one. Okay, so let's get to it. So if you look at number 19 here, it says which graph best represents the solution set of Negative 4x is less than or equal to 6y minus 54. Well, if you remember when we did inequalities, there's basically four kinds of inequalities. There's less than, there's greater than, there's less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. And when you have an inequality and you put it on the coordinate plane, you're going to get a shaded area, depending on how the numbers work out. But also there's another difference between what you do or what you have as far as the inequality goes. Does it have an equal sign attached to it or not? Okay, if it does, you're just going to get a straight line, and then one side will be shaded, depending on which one it is. However, if it doesn't have an inequality sign attached to it, you're going to get a dashed line, and then one side will be shaded. So for this particular problem, since your calculator can't do it for you, like I said, it might be able to do it now, but for the test, it won't be able to. You have to look at, what do I have? I've got an inequality with an equal sign attached to it. That means it has to be a solid line. So if you go look at the answer choices, could it possibly be A? Yes, that's a solid line in the shaded area. Could it be B? No, the dashed line. Same with C. Could it be D? Possibly, okay? So you've already ruled out C and or B and C because they have dashed lines. Okay, and then the next thing that I do, if I'm doing an inequality without a calculator, I plug in the origin for X and Y. The origin is 0, 0. So I plug in 0 for X. So you have negative 4 times 0 is less than or equal to 6. And then 0 for Y times 0 minus 54. Then you just multiply that out. 0 is less than 6 times 0 is 0. So you're left with negative 54. Is 0 less than or equal to negative 54? No, if you look at the number line, 0 is in the middle and negative 54 is way to the left. 0 is greater than. So what that tells you is that this statement is false. If this statement is false, in other words, if, because it's saying a 0 is less than negative 4, that tells you that the origin is not shaded. If this statement were true, that would tell you that the origin is shaded. Okay, so now we know it's a solid line and the origin is not shaded. Let's go look. Would it be A, solid line, and the origin here at 0, 0 is not shaded? Yeah, looks like A is the answer. Let's look at D, since that's the only possible one. Well, the origin is shaded. Okay, that's not what we're looking for because the statement was false. So the answer is A in this case. So you just kind of have to use a little bit of logic when you're going through these things. If you just understand what you're looking at and what you're given, they're not too difficult. And if you can rule out two of the answer choices, I'm telling all my classes that basically, there's 4 or 5 gridables like number 20 here on a 54 question test. But all the rest are multiple choice. If you can rule out 2 answers on many of your questions, and then you completely guess on the 2 that it's possible or possibly right, you'll get 50% of those right on average, okay? And 50% on the STAAR EOC is passing, believe it or not. So, that's part of this whole prep thing, is to teach you some testmanship techniques too. Rule out the bad ones. And then if you can't go any further and you have to guess, at least now you have the 50% chance of getting it right instead of 1 out of 4. Okay. Anytime you're given something that looks like this, or it may look like this, They may put it over here, kind of in place of that. All that says is I have to put in a 16 wherever there's an X. If there's more than one X, you put it in all of them. If there's only one X, you put it in that X. Okay, so if I rewrite this and basically say 1/3 4 minus 16 squared, okay, what's 4 minus 16? It's negative 12. But when I square it, it's negative 12 times negative 12. It becomes positive 144. 1/3 144. 1/3 of 144 is 48. The end. Okay. So once you substitute that in for that, then yeah, you can just put this in the calculator just like that in the calculate mode, and it'll tell you what the answer is. You know, you don't have to do it all separate like what I did. You can just put this whole thing right here in the calculator and say, oh, 48. So pretty straightforward. Okay, this next one on the graph shows the linear relationship between a maximum area in square feet that can be painted and a number of gallons of paint used. It's linear. When you look at what it's asking for, which of these best represents the rate of change? What is rate of change? It's just slope. What's the slope of this line? Change in y over change in x. I don't know if you've seen those little triangles before. It's really supposed to be the Greek letter delta. Sometimes you'll hear delta y over delta x when you get into higher math level courses. And what it just means is the change. In other words, it's like y2 minus y1. It's just delta y. Okay, so it's rise over run, change in y over change in x. When I'm looking for slope, I look for two convenient points. This is pretty straight and it goes through a lot of points that can be used. So I just make it as simple as possible. Make that one there and that one for x equals 1. That way the change in x is only 1, so your denominator is 1. So really all you're looking for is your numerator, your change in y. 400 starts at 0 and ends at 400, so your change is 400. So 400 over 1, 400. That's the slope. But you could have picked any of those points. You could have gone all the way up here and said, you could have said change in y is 1600, but that corresponds to a change in x of 4. So 1600 over 4 is still 400. So that would be answer choice C than Charlie. Okay. If you put this in, x plus 7 squared equals 81. If you put this in your calculator, I'll show you under numerical solve. So basically, go into calculate mode. Okay, hit the menu button and scroll down to algebra. Over to numerical solve. And then remember, you enter the equation just as written. So it's x plus 7 squared is equal to 81. Remember, you have to put a comma and then an x and then in the parentheses. And then just hit enter. It tells you 2. Okay, so if you go back to your equation here, to the test, it says 2. The thing about the end solve, the numerical solve, it'll only give you one answer. It'll give you usually the highest value one. But if you look at your answer choices, There's only one +2. That's right here. So that would say that J is the right answer. That's one way you can do it. Okay. Another way is you can multiply this out. I'll show you what I mean. So it's x plus 7 times x plus 7 because it's squared. It's equal to 81. So x times x is x squared. X times 7 is 7x. 7 times x is 7x. 7 times 7 is 49. It's equal to 81. But you have to set it equal to 0. So you have to subtract 81 from both sides. And you end up with x squared plus 14x, because I combined these two. 49 minus 81 is negative 32, equal to 0. Okay, so now you have a quadratic in standard form. If you look at the calculator, again, there's another thing you can use here. If you click the menu button, go down to algebra, scroll across, and then go down to polynomial tools number 3, and go across and find roots of polynomial. You'll get a box that looks like this. It's a second degree equation, and you're looking for real roots. For algebra 1, that'll always be the case. So you don't even have to do anything here. Just scroll down and click OK. And then it's basically saying, hey, give me the coefficients for the x squared term, the x term, and the constant. Okay, so we knew for the x squared term it was 1, because it was just x squared. The next one was 14. And the next one was negative 32. You click OK, and it says, does your equation look like this? Yes. Are you solving for x? Yes. Then you just hit enter. And it tells you your roots are negative 16 and 2. So it gives you the answer right there. Okay. One other way you could do this, and I won't show in the calculator because I don't need to, but you can do the same thing. You subtract the 81, except leave the x plus 7 squared like it is. Subtract 81 from both sides, and you end up with. And then you go into the graphing mode in the calculator and just put in this where the function is, and then look at it. It'll give you the parabola. You may have to zoom out, but basically it goes through +2 and negative 16. So you could do it that. So there's 3 ways that you could have done this. Some of the ways I'm going to show you, you're probably going to say to yourself, there's no way I'm going to do that. It looks too hard. And that's fine. But some of you will like it and say, I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to show you several options for as many problems as I can. And pick the one you like. Or come up with your own. You know, everything I don't know them all. I think I know them all sometimes, but every now and then a student say, hey, Mr. Martinez, can I do this problem like this? I said, wow, nice job, yes. Okay, so, okay, domain and range. This one's asking for the domain. What is a domain? Talked about this the other day. What is a domain? It's basically, hey, what can X be? What is the range? What can Y be? It's really it. They go in the same order, X, Y, domain, range. That's why I always say them in that order, because they go with each other. Okay. So this says, what is the domain? This has endpoints. So I didn't give you an equation, and I didn't give you a graph with no endpoints. So the domain is going to have limits on it. You can't say all real number has endpoints. So, but if you look at the answer choices, can you rule out two of them? Sure you can, because you're looking for X, and there's a Y there, and there's a Y there. So it's not one of those. You're looking for the domain. What can X be? Okay. So go back and look at the graph. It's got to be either A or C. And basically there's looking at the X value of this two endpoints, and it goes from -1 to +3, which would be that answer choice. Notice that this one here, it also says X, but it goes from 5.3 to 27. Those are Y values, okay? So those numbers are numbers to the endpoint, but that's range. So just remember, domain goes with X, range goes with Y. Okay, this is the one I told you I was going to skip. It's not particularly hard or difficult. It just takes several steps, and I don't want to take the time to go through the explanation of all this until after we've done all the other problems. So we may not get to that today, and that's okay. Which situation does not show causation? Now, I told you at the beginning of the school year, and I'll just refresh you right now. You have a 65-minute class every 2 days for algebra and all your other classes. Okay, so 65 minutes for 2 days. On the regular schedule, before all this COVID stuff hit, we had 46-minute classes every day. So you had 92 minutes every 2 days, whereas opposed now you have 65 minutes every 2 days. What I'm saying is that we've lost about a third of the time available for me to teach you algebra than you would have had under a normal schedule. It's just the way it happened. You know, it's unfair to you guys because this is a high school credit course. Your other core courses are not. You don't get credit for high school for 8th grade science, 8th grade social studies, or 8th grade language arts, but you do for this one. You know, so, and you have to take the STAAR test, which is a requirement for high school graduation. And that's just unfortunate. So when I was looking at the curriculum, I decided to leave out some stuff that I didn't think was as important as the other stuff. And this is one of the things I left out. I figured I'd spend 2 or 3 minutes on it at the end of the year before the STAAR exam and stay with that. And if you can figure it out, great. If you can't, you're probably only going to have one question on it anyway. So there's a topic called correlation. And what it basically says is some things are correlated with other things. In other words, as X goes up, Y goes up. Or even as X goes up, Y goes down. That's a negative correlation. But what it's saying is when one thing happens, other things happen. Sometimes it's just by chance. Sometimes there's a relationship, and sometimes one thing directly causes the other thing. For example, today it's raining. So you can say, when it rains, the ground gets wet. True statement. Okay, that is a direct causation. In other words, the rain is causing the ground to get wet. Now I can give you another statement. When the weather gets hot, more people go to the beach. Does the hot weather directly cause the people to go to the beach? No, it doesn't. Okay, so, it leads people to eventually make decisions to go to the beach, but it doesn't cause them to go to the beach. So that is an association. In other words, as the temperature goes up, more people go to the beach. As one thing goes up, the other thing goes up. Yeah, they're correlated, but one didn't cause the other. And you may have heard the story about cigarette smoking years ago. There was a big fight for many years. Does cigarette smoking cause cancer? Well, there was a correlation. In other words, the more cigarettes people smoked, the more likely it was for them to get cancer. And the tobacco companies fought it for years and years, but eventually there was so much evidence that they said, cigarette smoking does cause cancer. There's causation there. There were a lot of lawsuits, and now there's warnings all over these cigarette packages and everything. Okay? So sometimes it takes a while for things like that to prove causation, because correlation isn't necessarily causation. Okay, so enough on that. If you remember that and you get a question like that on tests, just think about what I said, and you'll probably be okay. This situation, I really do not like this question because, first of all, it's a negative. Which situation does not show causation? See, when the student population of the school increases, the number of teachers at the school increases. They're saying that that is causation. I'm saying that it's not necessarily causation, because if all of a sudden we got 200 or 300 extra students, does that mean that our number of teachers automatically goes up because those students came in? No. The school board has to approve it, has to budget it, blah, blah, this, that, and the other. They may decide that, hey, we're just going to live with the teachers we have. So they say, yes, it is causation. I don't like it. B, this is a good one for causation. When the amount of sugar in a quart of apple juice is reduced, there are fewer calories in each serving. Are there calories in sugar? Yes. Here comes Aiden. Are there calories in sugar? Yes, there are.
Yes.
Okay, good job. So if you reduce the amount of sugar, there are going to be fewer calories. That is definitely causation. Okay. C, when there are more workers on a project, the project is completed in less time. They're saying, yes, that's causation, but what if you put in a bunch of workers and they're deadbeats, or they all hate each other? It might take longer. Okay. So I don't like some of their examples. Now, the one that does not show causation, when there is more protein in an athlete's diet, the athlete scores more points in a game. Okay? That is not cause. Just because you're eating more protein, it might make you a little more, might give you a little more muscle tone or athletic or something. Does it mean you score more points? No. Especially, what if you're playing football and you're a defensive tackle? You don't even score points in the game. What if you're playing golf? You want to score less points, because the lower the score, the better. Okay, so yeah, that's a stupid. The whole question is stupid. I don't like it. But that's the concept of causation. Okay. Number 26. Which function is equivalent to? They give you this one. Here's what they want you to do. They want you to go, okay, this is the order of operations thing. So I'll do this one first. And it's kind of funny because one of the previous problems had an x plus 7 squared. So we do x plus 7 quantity squared. X times x, x squared. X times 7, 7x. 7 times x, 7x. 7 times 7, 49. then you can combine these two and you get x squared plus 14x plus 49. Okay. But then you have this -4 out front multiplying that whole thing. So -4 times all of that. And you get -4x squared minus 56x minus 196. Okay, and then over here at the very end, you got -6 more, -6. So you end up -202. So -4x squared minus 56x minus 202. That would be answer F. That's the way they want you to do the problem. Here's the way I would do it. But of course, I've been doing math a long time. So some of these things occur to me more readily than they might to you. But if it occurs to you, go for it. When I look at these constants at the end, I notice they're all different. Which means if I can figure out the constants from the original equation, I might be able to get the answer without working too hard. So if I go 7 squared, 49, times -4, -196, minus 6 more, -202. And I look at these and I said, oh, there it is. There's my answer. Done. Okay. So that's the way I would have done it had I seen this. But, we all think differently. And if that doesn't occur to you, then, don't do it. Now, a third way you can do it, and this will always work, but sometimes it takes longer, is put this in the calculator. Graph it in the calculator. Put it in just as it's written. Graph it. And then graph each one of these. It can be time consuming, especially if your answer is J, which in this case it isn't, it's F, so it would be the first one. But if your answer is the last one, then you've gone through all 4. So it's time consuming, but not every problem is like this. And what you would get is something like this. When you graph this, because of the -4x squared, you get an upside down parabola. When you graph some of these others, you might get something that looks like this or something that looks like this. But when you get the one that falls exactly on the original one, that's the answer. Okay? So just keep that in the back of your mind when you come across problems where you're given an original equation and then you're asked which one is equivalent. If you can't figure it out using other methods, graph it and then graph the answers and see which one lays on top of it, because that's the answer. Okay. This one is an easy problem, but you have to grasp the concept first. Once you grasp it, it's easy. Paper airplane was thrown from the top of a building. The height of the airplane above the ground can be found using the function y equals -1.5x plus 60, where x is the time in seconds the airplane has been in the air. Okay, so if you go down further, it says, how many seconds did it take the paper airplane to reach the ground? Okay, so what's the first thing you need to recognize? What do you think is the important thing to recognize here? What is the level of the ground? Anyone? 0, right? It's 0. What does y indicate right here? It indicates the height. So really, if you can understand that your new equation is 0 is equal to -1.5x plus 60, then you got it. Okay, because they're saying the equation for the ground is this. They want to know how long was it in the air, which means they threw it off the 60-foot building and is now on the ground. So they want to know how long it took to get to a height of 0. Once you get this, then the rest is easy. To solve for x, you can do it using the numerical solve. You can solve it manually by adding 1.5x to both sides and then dividing by 1.5, and you end up with x is equal to 40. You can even graph this linear equation up top here. Y is equal to negative 1.5x. And it's going to look something like this. It's just a straight line. And guess where the x-intercept is? Oh, at 40. Okay, so there's at least 3 ways you could do this problem. The key is just recognizing that the ground is at 0. And when I tell you that, you say, of course it's a 0. That makes sense. But if I don't tell you that, then you may be struggling with, well, what the hell do they want me to do with this? Okay. This is a griddable problem, so there's no answer choices to look at to see what works. Okay, law of exponents. When you're multiplying the same base, you add the exponents. So same base x, you add the exponents. You end up with x to the 5th here. When you're dividing the same base, you subtract exponents. So x to the 8th divided by x to the 5th, you subtract the exponents and you get x to the 3rd. When you're taking a power of a power, in other words, x to the 4th to the 3rd power, you multiply the exponents. And when you have a negative exponent, you put it on the other side of the fraction and it becomes positive. So x to the negative 2, you put it on the bottom side of the fraction, it's x 1 over x to the positive 2. And the same if it was on the bottom, you put it on the top and it becomes positive. Okay, and those are the 4 basic rules for law of exponents. If you can do those, the rest is easy, no matter how big they get. Okay, so we look at this top part here, q to the 4th to the negative 3rd. You're taking a power of a power, so you multiply them. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. So I've got q to the negative 12 on top, and q to the negative 15 on bottom. Nothing gets done with that yet, okay? But I want to make these positive. So I'll put the bottom one on top and the top one on bottom. And I get q to the 15th or q to the 12th. But because they're the same bases and I'm dividing, I can just subtract exponents. 15 minus 12 is 3. And there it is. Okay, notice that the J is also has q to the 3rd, except it's on bottom. So if you made a mistake somewhere or subtracted wrong, you might end up with that. And notice F and G are q to the 27th. If you added 15 and 12, you get 27. So these test writers, they pick common mistakes made by students. So just be careful. Just because you might see your number up there, it may not be right. You guys are too smart for that. You know what's going on. Okay. In quadratics, you remember 0 is another word for root. It's another word for solution. Is another word for x-intercept. They all mean the same thing. And the odds are, over the course of an entire 54 problem test, you're going to see all 4 of those used in different ways, but they all mean the same thing. Where does the parabola cross the x-axis? Okay. With quadratics, there are 3 choices you can have. That doesn't cross, so there are no zeros. Just comes down and touches. So this is 0. This is 1. And then this is 2. It crosses there and there. And they can be upside down too. Okay, you can have one that does that. Oops. And it just comes down and comes up and touches the x-axis. So all 3 of these can be upside down and have the same. You can have one that has no roots like that. Okay, so there's only 3 choices: 0 roots, 1 root, 2 roots for quadratic. So they're saying, which one of these has only 1 0? Well, A has 2, it crosses it twice. B just touches, so that's the answer. C crosses twice, so that has 2. And then D doesn't even cross it. So that has no real roots. What it does have is 2 complex imaginary roots, which you will do in Algebra 2, but not for Algebra 1. In Algebra 2, you learn how to do complex and imaginary numbers, taking square roots of negative numbers and so forth. But don't worry about that now. Just know that that's not the answer. Okay, what is the solution set for this inequality? What they want you to do, the long way, is basically add 4x to both sides. Those cancel. You get 10 is greater than or equal to 9x plus 55. When you subtract 55 from both sides, those cancel and you get negative 45 is greater than or equal to 9x. Then you divide both sides by 9 and you get negative 5 is greater than or equal to x, or if you flop that whole thing over, it's x is less than or equal to negative 5. Okay, which is answer choice H. That's what they want you to do. If you're having a hard time with that, change this to an equal sign and put it in your numerical solve. So you end up with minus 4x plus 10 is equal to 5x plus 55. When you put that in your numerical solve, it's going to say that x is equal to negative 5. There's only one of these that has an x equal to negative 5 as part of it, and that's the same answer, H. Okay. So you can use your numerical solve to do inequalities to some degree, and you can do that if you want. But anyway, there's a couple ways you can do that particular problem. Okay. Factoring by grouping is a difficult process. I think I showed you one problem when we got to that in Unit 6. I showed you one way to do that. And I said, but we're not going to do that because I'd need to spend about 3 days on it. We just don't have the time. But basically, it involves multiplying this 21 by that 20, by that negative 20, and you get negative 420. Then you find all the factor pairs of 420 that add up to 13. Once you do that, then you have to break them up into its factor pairs, factor out other numbers and variables. It's a complicated process. And I teach it once a year. And before I teach it, I have to go back and review it again just to make sure I'm doing it right. Because it is complex, to say the least. Okay, I didn't teach you that because of time, So I'm going to teach you another way to do it, two ways to do this. Okay. Let me go to 2113 minus 20. Okay. Let's go to the calculator here. Okay, so get rid of this thing here. I'll go to the graphing mode there. Okay, so I get 21x squared plus 13x minus 20. Okay, and I graph it, hit the down arrow. Now, those factor choices that it gave, if it's a factor, it's going to be a straight line because it's just a, you know, a 3x minus 4 or whatever. It's just a mx plus b kind of thing. So it's going to be a straight line. But if it is a factor of this parabola, it will intersect the parabola at the x-intercept. So for this particular problem, I'll test that in front of me. Okay, for this particular problem, the first one, A, is 3x minus 4. So if you enter 3x minus 4 up in that top box, you can see the cursor flashing for F2. Okay, so that's 3x minus 4. Then hit the down arrow. That does not intersect at the x-intercept, so that's not a factor. Okay, let's hit the next one, 7x minus 5. 7x minus 5. Okay, that one does. So that's the answer. And I'll just do one more, 7x plus 4. Just to show you that that one won't intersect. And you can see that kind of goes right through the middle of the parabola without hitting either x-intercept. Okay, so that's one way for a complex quadratic like that. Okay. That's probably the way that I would recommend that most of you do this, because you're not going to do grouping, I don't think, unless you've done some serious algebra study on your own and figured it out. Okay. This next way, some of you are going to say, no way, I'm not doing that, too hard. But I'll show it to you anyway. Okay, if you remember a few problems ago, we went to algebra, polynomial tools, and then find the roots of polynomials. We did this, just click OK. And they're asking for the x squared coefficient, the x coefficient, and then the constant. So we know the x squared is 21. Next one is 13. The next one is negative 20. Hit OK. It says, does your equation look like that? You're solving for x? Yes, hit enter. And those are your solutions. Okay. Now you're saying, what the heck am I going to do with those? So let me show you. I'm going to go to a white screen right now so I can show some writing here. Okay, so your solutions are negative 4 thirds and 5 sevenths. You're thinking, how do I get factors out of those? Well, there's a mathematical way to do it, but I'm not going to even go through that. I'm just going to tell you, all you have to do, change the sign of both of them. So this becomes a plus and this becomes a minus. Put the denominator in front of an x. So you got 3x. And then put the numerator after that, plus 4. As one factor. Put this denominator in front of an x, 7x minus 5. And you're done. And those are the two factors, okay? And if you look, 7x minus 5 was the answer. That was answer choice B on that thing. 3x plus 4 isn't one of the answer choices, so that's why that didn't show up. Okay, so let me just clear that again and show you another example. Say your answer choices are 3 and -4/5. Okay, change the sign of both of them. So this becomes negative, this becomes positive. And put the denominator in front of an x. And if you have a 3 just by itself, the denominator is 1. We go 1x, and you don't need to write the 1, minus 3, it's the numerator. And then 5x is 4. And those are the two factors. Like I said, you don't need that 1 if it's a 1. And that's it. I know there's a lot to remember there. If you remember it, this is a good way to do it because it'll tell you what the roots are and you have to figure out the factors from that. If they're just whole numbers, makes it easy. If you do the poly root finder and it says 2, -5, those are your two roots, then your factors are x minus 2, x plus 5. You have to change the sign on both of them. That's it. If it works for you, great. If not, don't worry about it. Like I said, it's a little complex, but it's something your calculator can do for you. If not, then graph it. Like I said, graph it, the original, and then graph each one of the answer choices and see which ones cross the parabola at the x-intercept. Okay, getting close to getting done here. Remember Mr. Slope. Okay, if the line goes up and to the right, it's a positive slope. It goes up and to the left, it's a negative slope. If it is a vertical line, it is undefined. That's this U here under it. If it's a horizontal line, these dimples represent zeros. It's a zero slope. Okay, so just knowing that, look at what they gave you. What kind of slope is that? It's undefined. It's a vertical line. The only thing you need to figure out now is what's the equation for it. Okay, well, there's x equal 1, x equal 2, x equal 3, 4, 5. So this is x equals 6. Even though it goes up and down, you're thinking, a lot of students see that and they think, oh, it has to be y. Oh, it crosses the x-axis, so therefore it's x equals. If it did this, then that's y equals 5. But in this case, it's x equals 6. Okay? So then you look at your answer choices. J, x equals 6, slope is undefined. Okay, this next one's really easy. You don't need a calculator for it because you guys know that the standard form exponential function is y is equal to ab to the x. In that standard form, where is x? It's an exponent, right? That's what makes it an exponential function. Look at answer choices C and D. They have ax to the b. It's supposed to be ab to the x. See, there's x as an exponent, and there's x as an exponent. But here, x is a base, and here it's a base. So it's not one of those. Now, what is b? It's the multiplier. If it's greater than 1, it's growth. If it's less than 1, it's decay. They tell you since 1900, the total number of metric tons has increased. Look at your two possible answer choices. One of them is growth and one of them is decay. You pick the growth one because it's increasing. And that's it. You didn't even need a calculator for this. 34, very straightforward. Not even going to put it in the calculator for you because you guys can do this, but basically, look at what they gave you. It's just a straight equation, one variable. Calculator mode, scroll down the hit menu, algebra, numerical solve, put it in just like that. Don't forget the comma and the X at the end. And it'll tell you what the answer is, what X is equal to. And that's also a griddable. Okay. I don't remember what the answer is, but it doesn't matter. That's how you do it. 35 for a linear function. Parent function is y is equal to x. In other words, when x equals 1, y equals 1. When x equals 5, y equals 5. And that's like f right here. If I add or subtract a number at the end, I move it up or down. Did I move it up or down to get g? No, I kind of twisted it because they still intersect at the origin. So it can't be those two answer choices that have it move up or down. It can't be A or C. So it's either 1/3 or 3. And if you remember from doing these problems, the lower the number, the shallower the slope. So this would be a 1/3 x. 3x would look something like that, more steep. But you can put them in the calculator and graph them and look at them. And then the last one, here's the way I do this one. First of all, change it all to x if you're going to put it in the calculator. It won't recognize h. What's h squared times negative 4h? It's negative 4h cubed. Look at your answer choices. It's not g or j because they're positive 4h cubed. So it's got to be a or h. Now look at the last numbers. Negative 1 times positive 3. You multiply them together, you get negative 3. There's negative 3. There's not negative 3. There, your answer is F. However, if you don't see that, change them to X and put this in the calculator and graph it as written. Okay? Except with X's. Just graph it. Just write it like that and graph it. Then put each one of these in. Whichever one matches it, that's the answer. That's it. It's that easy. Okay, well, that was 36 problems. Got them done. So I recommend, I'm going to post this video after I convert it and put it on YouTube. I'll post it later on. So if you want to go back and look at any of them, you can. I'm going to also post the resource sheet, the reference sheet that I gave the students in class, but you guys at home don't have it. But you will get one of those on the STAAR test. So, okay, next time we'll go over the last of these problems, 37 through 54, and then we'll go on to something else. So we will see you next time.